Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Interlinked, the official Neo Tokyo podcast powered by Shrapnel.
Brace for impact, gamers, and prepare yourself for the sacrifice zone with Shrapnel. The world's first moddable AAA extraction-based shooter, built by a legendary, award-winning team behind some of your favorite games like Call of Duty and Halo. And they are kicking off 2024 with an absolute banger. People are finally going to be able to get their hands on Shrapnel during their early access season. And they are giving away $3 million worth of prizes. So buckle your chin straps and get ready to dive in and try and get your piece of the prize. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Playa3ull Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on Playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked.
Today, we have the one, the only, the legendary Wagner from Star Atlas. How you doing, my man?
I'm good, guys. Good to be here. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic alongside the legendary co-host, Nick. How you doing, my friend?
Oh, doing great. Ready to talk some crypto gaming.
Let's do it. So Swag, maybe you can kind of first of all tell us a little bit about the nickname, the story behind it. How'd it come about? Where'd it come from? All the juicy details. I know it's one of my favorite nicknames in all of crypto gaming, so I'd love to get the history on that.
I love it, man. I don't know that it's all that interesting of a story. Last name's Wagner. I just thought, hey, Swagner, kind of cool. I started using this in maybe 2017, something like that, 2016, 2017. And just something I stuck with. I've gone through a bunch of different handles, by the way. A lot of people who know my background know about the LAN party days. So I went from everything from Odyssey to Cove to Koval and just kind of landed on Swagner. I think it works. But yeah, that's it. That's the story.
Rock on. Well, now that we got a little history on the screen name, would love to dive into your history, kind of how you got into the whole space and how that really leads up into Star Atlas and then take us into the origin story there.
For sure. And it's a story I've told dozens and dozens of times. So I'll try to keep it brief with you guys. But true background is really in the financial space. So hold a designation called a CFA charter. It's a chartered financial analyst. I worked in the investment management field as both an analyst and ultimately moving on to portfolio manager. That all kind of changed in 2013. I was on a bike ride with a buddy of mine and guy that I have known since high school. And he started talking to me about mining crypto coins and these alternative trading market pairs for crypto coins. And I was pretty captivated in that discussion. Met up with him, a day after with a 6 pack of beer, and he showed me how to build out these GPU rigs to mine script coins. And I mentioned the LAN party days. Grew up building all my own PCs. Our weekends were eating pizza, drinking Mountain Dew, and just playing every possible FPS you can imagine at each other's houses. And so I felt it was pretty easy and straightforward to get into the mining space with crypto. That got me hooked. It was really bad timing. This was right before the Mt. Gox collapse and, the subsequent year and a half, 2 year bear market through 2014, 2015. But I saw an opportunity there, and I thought it kind of correlated with my work in finance and in capital markets. And by 2015 had made the decision, give up the formal career, go full-time crypto. There's really something to this. In late 2016, I launched my first company in the space. It was called Tokes. And this was a business that operated at the intersection of legal cannabis and crypto. Our objective was to provide financial solutions and a form of banking and electronic payments for that industry. Had quite a few successes there, quite a few failures there. One of our biggest accomplishments was working with the state of Nevada. We helped get this bill passed, AB 466. It was a tokenized closed loop financial ecosystem for the cannabis industry, working with the treasurer's office. We were all prepared to go to market with this and start promoting it, and the pandemic hit. This is like late 2019 going into 2020. that door closed on us, and it was really our last chance at generating some revenue for that business. And I only had two guys left on the team at the time. It was Danny Floyd and Jacob Floyd, and I kind of sat down at the table with them, and so we need to do something else. And we all identified what was happening with NFTs and DeFi at the time, and really this emerging field of Web3 gaming, or GameFi at the time. Now, Danny and Jacob both have deep experience in game development. Danny himself has worked for a number of major AAA studios, been building games for 20 years. And so when I came to them and said we should build a game, we should integrate all of these elements of blockchain, and let's bring this new idea to market, their eyes lit up. I don't think I've ever seen them as excited as the day that I brought that idea to the table. And over the course of a few months from mid 2020 going into 2021, fully conceptualized and materialized the game design docs for Star Atlas, and drew up our white paper, and officially went to market, debuted with an announcement. I think it was January 9th, 2021, and thus Star Atlas was born. That was my short version, by the way.
Well, super interesting that you had worked in the cannabis space. That was sort of my main focus coming out of grad school, and then sort of was left by just a bad taste in my mouth from like just how hard it was to operate in such a regulatorily tight environment. Super interesting because I think you took on the most regulated part of that highly regulated industry. Would be super interested in just some of the like takeaways and lessons from that experience that have helped you on the crypto side and the launching of Star Atlas.
Well, we did really try to hold ourselves to a high standard in terms of regulatory compliance. We went out and had a 90-page MSB KYC compliance document drafted up. We got MSB license registered with FinCEN. Whether or not any of that was really necessary, given the nature of the technology that we were using and how we were facilitating peer-to-peer transactions, is really unknown. But we did want to try to get ahead of that to the fullest extent possible. What was most surprising to me about that business is so what we had really built was a point of sale software and a merchant gateway that enabled configuration of different assets that people could receive, as well as methods of immediately converting those assets upon receipt. So being able to convert into stable coins, or provide an allocation to Bitcoin if that's what they wanted. And all of this was integrated on the back end with various DEXs. But when we brought the solution, the functional solution, to the table, and I was presenting this to various dispensaries, which is really the immediate target, was working at the front end, the consumer facing side of the business, there was so much skepticism. And again, this was 2017, 2018, 2019. So there was still a lot of skepticism from industry operators about using crypto and the legality of crypto, or whether or not they were ever going to be able to get their money out, which is understandable. But I would have thought going into it that we have this packaged solution to the problem that they're facing, and we've developed all of this architecture around it that makes it possible for them even to get in and out of crypto. But I think, especially in Nevada, where we were operating, it is a limited license state, and it's very difficult to secure those licenses. And they see that as a big asset for the business. And there was a reluctance to use new technology like ours because it could jeopardize that license. They could lose it. And obviously, without that, they couldn't operate. So um, I guess the key takeaway, the lesson is as great of an idea can be, and as great as execution can be, you still really need to understand the market and demand for the product or service that you're building, and make sure that it's something that people really want. That idea of product market fit.
Absolutely. For the audience who might be climbing out of a cave or just came out of hibernation and somehow has not been keeping up with what Star Atlas is doing, you mind giving the audience a little snapshot of how things stand today?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Star Atlas is a very comprehensive, big vision project. There are a number of components to this. I'll kind of break it down across a few environments. I think what we're most likely most known for right now is our flagship product line, which is a AAA space exploration MMO. We get compared a lot to games like Star Citizen, maybe Starfield to some extent, but you can kind of think along those lines. The idea is hop into your spaceship, explore the stars, conquer territory, establish political jurisdiction. And all of this is with a deep integration of a sustainable economy that we've been focused on and emphasizing since the beginning. But obviously, that economic layer is driven by all of the on-chain components, all of the crypto assets and crypto mechanics. Um, but beyond this MMO product line, we're building out a browser-based implementation. We call that Sage, which is Star Atlas Golden Era. This is really more of a top-down RTS MMO. It's a persistent map. Right now, it is 2D in browser, although we have some 3D elements on the way. But players are able to go out and form fleets, move around the map, collect resources, transport those to various destinations, and then craft items, craft components, and secure loot or otherwise earn Atlas, our in-game currency. Sage is where we've really deployed the initial economic gameplay loops where play to earn is alive and well, peer-to-peer trade is flourishing, our economy is growing. And what's really cool about this, and this will carry through to all of our implementations, but virtually every gameplay mechanic in Sage is on chain. So everything from fleet formation to movement and coordinates, the extraction systems, inventory and localized inventory, crafting tables, combat systems, these are all being executed directly on Solana, which is the layer one, the protocol that we chose all the way back in 2020. There's a big reason for that, and I can jump into it. But just to kind of close out on the product lines, if you will, we also have a mobile application that's rolling out this year. It's a mobile fitness app. It's a spin on this move to earn segment of the industry. The difference in our case is that players aren't earning currency for exercise. They're actually loading in a character or a crew member. And as they participate in these physical activities, they level that crew member up. Now, I had mentioned the on-chain mechanics and our vision, our philosophy really is to build as much of the game logic on-chain as possible. One of the benefits of that is that all of these separate environments are not actually siloed product lines. They're all calling upon the same data set. They're all calling upon the blockchain as really the execution layer. And so when you take an action in Sage Labs, for example, you could see that action replicated in Unreal Engine, or alternatively, the resources that people are producing and consumable items that people are producing in Sage, those are usable in Unreal Engine and vice versa. So we really like to think of this as a single product in a single universe, just with multiple paths to experiencing that. And the intention is to make this as accessible to as many people around the world as possible. Whether you're on mobile, if you're on browser, or if you have the high-end gaming PC, you can still participate in Star Atlas gameplay and Star Atlas economics.
Yeah, I absolutely love the idea of yes, starting with the MMO and really engaging people in something that's really familiar, like an MMO and um, you know, cosmic with space exploration and adding your own flair and touch to that and kind of coming onto the scene with that, but then also having these additional products, these additional ideas coming. And it seems like they're integrated too, to where it's all going to kind of build on itself over time. Do you guys kind of see yourselves as, would you say more of a studio or more of a platform? Or like how do you even understand what the entirety of the project even is at this point? And maybe you can kind of paint a picture for us of where you really want to go and what end game looks like for you guys.
I love the question, and it's honestly it makes the question when I'm on interviews of like what is Star Atlas so difficult for me to answer, because depending on the audience that I'm speaking to, it could be an entirely different narrative. And the reality is longer term, this is a development platform. Those on-chain mechanics are composable, they're extensible, and we already have dozens of people around our community that are building out their own dApps, their own DeFi, their own gameplay operational efficiency programs and making those available to our players. But you can see that extending out to the idea of a modding platform or even creating a separate storyline that utilizes Star Atlas assets and IP. And becomes a separate game, but it's all part of the same universe. So, in so many ways, long term, we really are this platform. We also happen to be building the core product line and really the cornerstone of Star Atlas, which is the core gaming product itself. Now, we are a studio. We have departments in our division in our company that are really focused specifically on gameplay development. But even if you look at our engineering core and our engineering group, um, some of them are gameplay engineers and work on game design and game development, but we have a huge blockchain engineering team on our side, on our team as well. And of course, they're all working together, but they're all really fulfilling different functions of the bigger vision of the product line. And from my personal viewpoint, I really think of the gaming product as being the hook. It's the core attraction. That's how we start to build this new digital society. The foundation of it all is, decentralized governance, decentralized politics, and a new nation state like sustainable economy with real commerce being produced and real GDP being produced and real value being extracted. But without the game, without the thing that brings people in, this society never grows and never flourishes. So I think the opportunities are endless, but we do have to be successful on building a best in class game first.
100%. And when you're thinking about how you, I'll say, funnel people in, um, and using the game as kind of top of funnel to then bring people into the rest of it, what's what would you say is your hook or your competitive advantage comparatively to League of Legends or World of Warcraft, or insert a thousand other examples there? Like, what's really going to help define you guys, or hold you distinctly apart from the competition there? What's the secret sauce from your perspective?
There's quite a few things here. Again, but as a preface, this is going to be a long-term development process. I think it's no secret to you guys and to the industry at large at this point that AAA, highest quality, best-in-class game development, this takes many, many years. A decade is kind of the common development cycle now for a mainstream game. Now, we don't follow that philosophy of building in isolation and maybe marketing or teasing out what it's going to be and then releasing it when it's done. We effectively are building mini gameplay loops that people can engage in. Maybe a quick tangent and side note is our current build that's on Epic Games Store and leading into the middle of this year, where we're anticipating our 2.2 release. This is focused on competitive combat racing. So this is a complete gameplay loop that would be comparable to something like a Forza or a Assetto Corsa, other racing games, except this is hover flight with the vehicles, with the NFTs that you own. And I've also described it as kind of a next gen Mario Kart. You're picking up boosts, you're picking up ammo, you're setting down traps. You're there on this competitive course blowing people up. Maybe like a pod racing is another example, right? So
Space bananas and all.
yes, I mean, honestly, there are things like the little speed traps that you can lay down that disable a ship for a period of time, right? And so we're rolling out various components of the game through time that ultimately build towards the bigger picture of the open world MMO. But we want people to get something tangible in their hands that they can engage in, get excited about. Also this year we're rolling out things like character progression and ship configuration and ship mastery. So you get that MMO sense of accomplishment as you play. You know that you're getting rewarded with something. But longer term things that I think differentiate us are certainly the quality standards that we hold ourselves to. So you're getting a really high quality, high caliber game when you play with deep sophistication in gameplay mechanics, in story, in lore, in the content that we produce and release, and the quest lines. But every detail is fine tuned and customized from our team as we bring it to market. But what I've just described are really the elements that make a game AAA. And I know that's a term that gets thrown around a lot in Web3, and whether or not people are really delivering on that or not is up for debate. But in our case, this is really every fine detail that we focus on to make sure that your gameplay experience when it's live is everything a mainstream user would expect. One of the other critical advantages, though, that we have, and arguably almost any Web3 game with a strong economic design and architecture in their game, is the idea that there's all of these value adds. The value proposition is substantially different. If I'm a long time gamer, 30 years plus playing games, and uh, the idea that you can actually own your asset and you're not prohibited from trading or selling that, that's huge. That's one step. The idea that the in-game currency that you're earning has access to this alternative financial ecosystem that is crypto. You can generate real value for time spent. That's huge. And again, in our case, given the composable nature of the platform, we're presenting an opportunity to creators, developers, entrepreneurs all over the world to build alongside us to co-create this universe. And that's truly how I think we accomplish this grand vision. It's not everybody relying on us as a singular centralized studio to bring every single feature to market. It's here is an interoperable ecosystem with plentiful opportunity for you to create around if you have a desire to do so. I would say that once again does tie back into being reliant on our success at attracting users. And I oftentimes say this is analogous to a layer one protocol because what makes a protocol like Ethereum or Solana or AVAX, like what makes them attractive? Well, why do builders want to build there? It's because there's users there. It's there because there's TVL there. There's a reason to go interact with that chain. And so for us, it's building that great product, bringing the users in. And now if you're an entrepreneur, you say, well, I can build a fleet lending and scholarship platform, and I know that there's 100,000 people that want to use it. Well, that's an opportunity that now is available to you. So, um, yeah, I think those are a few of the components. Just one more thing on gaming is that our at least intention and our design speaks to easy to play, difficult to master philosophy. So there's really deep layers of complexity in the game, but we want everyone to be able to get in and start having fun. And it's only for those users who really want to dive deep and immerse themselves in the game. It's almost a limitless learning opportunity for them to find ways to optimize and outperform other players.
100%. I want to touch on two things you previously said, but let's start with the first, which is competitive, right? Like this idea of competing against other people. In my mind, immediately that jumps to esports, PvP, esports, and I'm a huge proponent of that. Absolutely obsessed with the idea of the intersection of esports and Web3. Would love to get your take on how you see esports fitting within the ecosystem. So how are you doing that? And then how are you baking in the Web3 components to there? And then maybe extrapolate, like scope out on
Mhm.
that piece. And then after, I really want to do a deep dive into governance. So just give a little heads up on what I'm going to ask next.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, in terms of esports, we don't have any really gameplay mechanics that are live right now that would be suitable for esports, but there are a number that I could speak to going into the future. It would be pretty uncommon for any MMO to be streamed in esports simply because these are kind of like instance-based, time-based events. You get into a match, it lasts a certain amount of time, and you have a winner, a victor at the end of that. And that's not really how MMOs play out because it's a persistent world, but it's always dynamically changing as well. And there is no end game in that. But even things like our competitive combat hover racing, for example, we could easily set up a tournament series where people are competing. And what I think is really cool about it, especially with things like ship configuration and ship mastery, where you're able to upgrade components through time and modules through time, and outfit it with different weaponry and even specialization in the sub skills of the ship itself. Your specific loadout could give you a competitive advantage over another player, even if all other things were equal. But
Flex in
so
your like you flex your builds and compare and contrast and compete there as well.
100%. No, yeah, I think so. That is one avenue for us. We could also do open space battle arenas. So again, it's kind of instance based. It's all contained, but I thought about this through a number of different ways. One of them could even be a point based system, kind of like a tabletop game. Because if you've ever played, Warhammer 40K, you get 1,000 points to allocate across your army, and you decide how you want to configure that. So we could do these incremental instance-based space arenas with either teams or individuals. We do have an experimental third-person shooter mode available right now. So this is with your avatar, single character, bunch of different weapons, loadout for your character. Um, right now, it is a bot arena, so you're only practicing against AI or NPCs. But certainly in the future, and as we open up access to our full multiplayer concurrent user support, that's when these arenas can come alive. What's really cool about a third-person shooter to me are a lot of the physics mechanics that we have. So we have a knee slide, we have jetpacking, we have a couple of different dodge mechanics. So that type of physics really adds a lot to how dynamic the gameplay is, alongside all of the different weapons and maps that people can choose from. So, a few ideas there on how we could create effectively arenas around specific gameplay mechanics. And the way we're rolling the game out, again, is kind of in this iterative minigame fashion. So, each of these are different experiences that you can enter into now. They just all coalesce in the future when we have the full V1 out and ready.
100%. Yeah, I could see so much, so much interest in racing, in fighting, or even in something like more of a longer form battleground where, you have like resource allocation and deployment, but in more of like short, I say longer form, like more of like a couple hours of like a full battleground or something. So I just think there's so much opportunity there that and there's so much richness with what you've built thus far, that, or so much depth rather, I should say, that combining and interweaving these different mechanics could probably lead to some really, really interesting PvP there. Okay, I want to ask about governance, and then I know, Nick, you have some questions too, so I don't want to hog the question asking time here. But oh yeah, but so on the governance part, just would love to get a deep dive. Seems like you guys have, you have your two token model, so there's something to be said there. Um, Maybe just kind of walk us through how all that works, how you're envisioning it, what is everything gonna look like, what should it look like, and what are you thinking about all these things?
Yeah, our governance system is really cool because it's not only at this panaculum level, which is kind of ecosystem wide, platform wide governance of the project itself, but we have these political strategy gameplay mechanics throughout the game. So I'll get into those. Maybe just a quick point on the dual token model, because I know that can be a controversial topic. A lot of people are questioning, is it better just to have one token? Why have two tokens? For me, it was critically important that we isolate the governance functionality of the ecosystem from in-game earnings. I think they serve completely unique purposes, and kind of commingling them just makes for more difficult tokenomic design and economic design throughout the game. I guess the big outstanding question for more of the trader mentality or the speculator mentality out there is, where does the value accrue? Which token is going to go up more and why? But nevertheless, again, I felt that these functions were distinct and we needed to have those separated and tokenized. Um, so I had mentioned this Panaculum DAO. Now, we've outlined this in the white paper. I've often talked about it, but our long-term vision is ultimately to turn over the intellectual property of Star Atlas over to the DAO. That's not the case today. That is intentional. That's by design. It is our vision, our studio's vision, and our ideas, and we have the expertise to bring this to market. And game development is hard enough without having um, uh, too much external influence over what gets done on a day-to-day basis. For as much as we're advocates for decentralization, people would be shocked at the amount of centralization and coordination that needs to take place to bring a game production fully to market. So the way we've structured the tokenomics is that we have the majority. I don't know if this is actually even true today because we've been around now for 3 years, but we have the majority of the circulating supply at token generation. Through time and through people earning this Polis token, we effectively are diluted out of that majority stakeholder position. And so it's gradually and slowly that people are able to then exert their influence and their desires on what gets built and how it gets built and what changes need to take place. I would maybe footnote this and just say that obviously DAOs are very experimental. The idea of decentralized governance is very experimental. It's a question as to whether or not collective consensus will even work. But that is the goal. And again, the goal is to bring the IP into the DAO, and then the DAO has the ability to drive that and steward that forward into the future. I see this going so far as I guess actually stepping back for a moment, we've also segregated out the cash flows of the company. Certain revenue goes into the studio that enables us to develop the game, and certain cash flows go directly into the DAO. Now, gameplay mechanics are designed such that virtually every activity has some type of operating cost associated with it. And so when players are, you can consider this a form of taxation. And when players are paying those various taxes, that money gets channeled directly into the DAO. We also share revenue on royalty fees. For example, we built a marketplace, and some royalty fees go to us, some go to the DAO. In any event, the DAO has now collected around $5 million in value, and that becomes a treasury that DAO holders and stakeholders will have the ability to leverage for various activities. My proposal and what I hope we see as soon as this becomes accessible from the stakeholder base is that we utilize that to further grow the ecosystem. I'm thinking things like developer grants, like running hackathons, running game jams, running conferences, and otherwise finding ways to bring new innovators and creators into the space, and also furthering awareness of Star Atlas itself. Uh, it's a bit of a sensitive subject, but it's not unrealistic to think that at some point in the future, the DAO stakeholders, when they have the majority control of the DAO, are able to do things like distributions out of that based on certain actions. And then within the game, again, there's all of these different territories. It's a big universe, and there's three core factions: the Mud, the Ooster, the Oni. This is effectively the humans in the future, sentient android beings, and then a consortium of alien races. These are the three factions that are effectively competing for territory throughout this universe. Um, so that's the faction wide, but then there's regional and local DAOs, and there will be separate governance and political structures in each of those regions. And we envision that as a means for people to effectively capture areas of space and then define parameters around operating within that space, which is to say that somebody might charge you a fee to fly through a warpole that's in their region. They might define taxes on anybody who's operating on a planet and extracting resources from that region. So these, it's like rules, laws, taxes that players can define based on the regions they control, leveraging their polis voting power.
Oh, I love the approach that you guys have to governance because in our space, I think there actually is this urge to decentralize too early. Now, if you take some of the best examples of decentralization being, the democracy that is the United States, or even looking at Bitcoin, at one point, both of those were either team-led or individual-led dictatorships. When you're trying to figure out if you want to cross the Delaware, that is not the time to take a giant vote across the entire country. When
Right.
you're designing Bitcoin, that's not the time to ask the entire nation or the entire world to weigh in on development. But then once you get to a certain stage, really the benefit of decentralization, the benefit of democracy is the longevity piece. So you
Mm-hmm.
got to build something on the early stage so that it's worth preserving, and then you hand over the keys because we've all seen when the power is concentrated in one hand, you just don't get lucky on that roulette wheel of leadership indefinitely. Eventually, you end up with someone who's not going to be making the right decision. So I really do love that model. Shifting gears a little bit to the purely gaming side, one of my favorite things about crypto gaming actually has nothing to do with crypto and nothing to do with blockchain. And I think if you take all of that away and you compare to how game development's been done in the past, the real distinction is previously all game development was done like big blockbuster movies. a team behind closed doors with maybe a couple focus groups, designs something, markets it, and then releases it. Where game development in our space is much closer to stand up, where you're getting out there every single day and you're like, hey, community, this is what I've got today. And sometimes they're like, this is bullshit, and I don't like this, and I don't like that, and that sucks. And it's a brutal process. So I'd love if you could touch upon some of the intricacies between, how game dev has been done and what's it like to craft something like this on this scale out in the open, out on stage in front of an audience.
Yeah, it is completely out in the open, skirts up, like, showing it all off. I think that personally, I think that that is part of the experience for the players. It is a challenge from the builder perspective. You're constantly being judged, constantly being criticized. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the majority of the polish on a product and what ultimately comes to market happens in the last 10%. Like you can show them all of the building blocks of the first 90% to get the pieces in place, but it's not until you get that last 10% that it really looks great. Um, uh, there was a docu series on Apple, and it is I'm trying to remember the name. Light and Magic, which was about ILM, George Lucas's VFX studio, and one of the anecdotes from that is essentially like all of these guys that are producing Star Wars, they hated the movie like 90% of the way through. And of course we all know the success of Star Wars, but these are the guys that were intimately involved building it, and they had awareness of what was coming and how it was all coming together. But man, sometimes you see that backstage how the sausage is made, and it's ugly, and it's not really until all of the pieces come together that you have a masterpiece on your hands. And so that's kind of the environment that we need to navigate and be able to explain to people is like, this is what we're building, and this is the intention, and this is the vision, and this is how we get there, and this is what we're showing you today. And a lot of people ignore everything you just said, and they say, "Oh, this doesn't look good at all," or I'm being kind of vague here, but ultimately, that is the environment that we're operating through. It's particularly important for us because we've taken the approach of bootstrapping our business from day one. We did not take venture capital in. We've not taken venture capital in. We had some enormous success in 2021, kind of riding the wave of that market cycle, and really being able to capture the hearts and minds of a lot of people and cultivate this great community around Star Atlas. And so we've been able to generate revenue along the way that pays for development. But these things, a game like ours is 350 million, $400 million production by the time it's all done. We're talking about, you could produce 2 or 3 blockbuster movies for the price of producing one of these video games. So it's really important for us, though, to be close with our community because that is really our funding source. That's the revenue mechanism. And we're not out there relying on venture capital to, provide us with the next check so that we could build the next feature set. And so it's almost a double-edged sword. While there is criticism and we are exposed and constantly in the limelight with our community, at the same time we're able to take their feedback, take their comments, and use that to evolve the product line. And we know immediately if something is successful or not successful, and what we should put our time into and what we should stop putting our time into. So it becomes this very dynamic live environment that we have to work in. That's also a very high pressure environment because everything you do is being graded the day you release it. But again, I think that that is a beneficial part of the process because what we ultimately get to is something that we know the market wants because they've told us all along the way.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important point. And I do think on net that having the community's input is a strength, particularly when you see a good comedy special, that's been polished through so much critique and so much feedback from the audience. Now, just like when formatting a good joke, sometimes just moving the inflection point turns an absolute, everyone's like, what is he even talking about to a, fall out of your seat laughing. So
Mhm.
as a leader, when when you're getting this feedback, when do you like sort of get the indication, hey, we're onto something here. And I'm going to keep trucking through this negative feedback because I think there's something that we're going to build that's pretty cool, even if the community doesn't see it yet. And when do you take that as a, hey, stop sign? This should be, choked out in the crib. We really shouldn't put development dollars here.
It's a hard question to answer because we are a data oriented company, and we do, we have tons of different data dashboards, econ dashboards, analysis that we can pull from, user metrics that we can pull from, and all of that is very informative. But by and large, I think making a decision like you just described, where sometimes you feel like you do know what's best. That's really an intuitive decision that you just have to make. So it's kind of a gut check. And sometimes you get it wrong, sometimes you get it right. There's no glory when you get it right, by the way, and it's all shame when you get it wrong. So, but the glory can be celebrated internally, and then you get the opportunity to keep building. But there's no fine line. It's very much gray area, very much opaque as to when do you listen, at what point do you listen to the community, what point do you know that you're doing it right? It's just a big blur.
Absolutely. And I got one more in the holster. And then I know, Ben, you got a question on the tip of your tongue. Um, You had mentioned, one comparison that's easy for people to grasp is Starfield. It just came out. In some ways, it was applauded. In some ways, it was heavily critiqued. Was that something that you guys were watching closely? I probably put in 20 hours or something in Starfield. One like parallel where I think could be, worth exploring is just the economic portion. I ended up spending maybe 15 of my 20 hours sending up an intergalactic trade where I'm bringing this mineral from this planet to another in order to be able to, manufacture my ammo or, whatever it was. That to me really reminds me of some of the economics that were laid out in your original white paper. I've had the fortune to have been following Start Atlas since that white paper and bored some immediate family members to tears talking about how I was going to be essentially the Getty of the cosmos by getting in early on whatever fuel the ships are racing. So just curious if your team found any parallels or interesting tidbits with that release and the feedback it generated.
I mean, certainly something we were keeping an eye on, not necessarily from a competitive analysis standpoint, but really just more of how does this game perform. There's I kind of want to draw a distinction, but I'll say the user set that's really interested in these space exploration games isn't massive. It's kind of a niche market to build an open world, space game. EVE Online, which is one of the longest running, most successful MMOs in the world, I think they launched in like 2003, 2004, something like that, still running today. And I could be getting this number wrong, but I think they have something like 20,000 daily active users, which is infinitesimally small compared to what daily active user bases we see today in big games. Um, but and even Star Citizen, these are really diehard fans. Our model is more comparable to Star Citizen than probably anything else in Web3 or anything else in game development. But these are kind of small subsets of players that really have this sci-fi fantasy interest and they want to play those. Where I think we're different is particularly on the economic layer because we can attract all of these different participants that are interested and motivated by some element of the game. I see entrepreneurs operating in our universe at some point in the future where maybe they never leave the space station, the central space station. They have an avatar, they have a shop, and all they're doing is trading with players. And maybe just, again, one little anecdote here, but our economy has been flourishing, as I said, in Sage. And I'm very interactive with our community in our Discord. And I just came to find out that there's this guy from India that is messaging people like 50 times a day, hustling, collecting all of these resources, and bringing them all together so he can craft these things called RFRs, which is how people are earning Atlas right now. And he's picking up like a 5% margin, but he's turned his job into sourcing supplies from different players and trading at OTC so that he can generate a little bit of yield. And I think that that's incredibly cool. Like that's an opportunity for someone not even playing the game, but in a way he is, and he is a part of the ecosystem. So I think that in our case, it's going to be attractive to a very wide audience for a lot of different reasons. And in particular, when you think about some of these more limited gameplay mechanics like racing, which is our first release. Well, racing is just a single game that you can play within the universe of Star Atlas in the future. So I'm kind of getting off track, but we keep an eye on games like Starfield coming out, more to see how it was received, and more to learn from the mechanics that they used or didn't use, and what people wanted, what people didn't want. I think we can learn more from the criticisms of Starfield than we can from the successes of Starfield. But man, I'm preaching to the choir with you guys, but the value proposition of Web3 is just so enormously different from traditional entertainment. And that's not to imply that the emphasis needs to be on crypto and all of the economic stuff. That just happens to excite me. Certainly focusing on the entertainment aspect of it, but when you couple the entertainment aspect with all of these tangential benefits, I there's just not really anything out there in mainstream that can compete.
I want to actually follow up on this point that you're making about this gentleman is going in and he's utilizing or playing in a way that's a bit untraditional, but he's out there hustling, he's making moves, and it sounds like he's actually seeing success in whatever metric he's going after here. I think one of my core theses of the whole space, all of Web3, all of crypto gaming, um, well, I'll say the metaverse as well, just to kind of throw all that in, is that everybody that's basically my age and under, 29 and younger, we've grown up in virtual worlds. And
Mhm.
over time, we are only going to spend more and more time online. Technology is a one-way street that's not going to go the other way. So this person is living out what I, in fact, believe will be the majority of people in the future are going to be existing more and more in these virtual worlds and in a more fully immersive over time experience. In in your opinion, do you see this as being kind of the goal where you are building a world in which people can exist and perform their daily functions of working and playing and creating and the four basics of humanity: to work, to play, to create, to love, fulfilling their needs all in this virtual environment and then basically existing in this place? Like, is that kind of the goal here, to really capture their imagination? And gaming is like the litmus, not the litmus test, the gateway drug into that, or is it something else, right? And like, how are you kind of thinking about it that way? And at what scale do you think that actually gets to, if that is the right path?
At the risk of coming across as dystopian, I think ultimately that is the goal. The short answer is yes. I've often described the vision or idea of Star Atlas as a new America moment, as being similar to the way that nation states operate, a global borderless economy with all of these gameplay mechanics and entertainment value that bring people in. But how powerful is it? And a lot of credit to Axie, because Axie Infinity was one of the first to demonstrate that you could captivate the interest of an entire country with a gaming product because of economic incentives. And ultimately, sure, there was unsustainable in their model, and so they're going through their evolution, but they were pioneers in demonstrating that potential. But how empowering is it to people all over the world to be able to operate in a global labor market digitally? This kind of speaks to, there's a book that I often reference, The Sovereign Individual. It's a great book, kind of walks through the evolutionary process of various eras of human history, from agricultural era all the way up to the information age that we're either emerging into or are in now. And the idea of digital nomads, where nation states ultimately are going to need to start competing over population based on the benefits that they provide and the amount of taxes that they charge. And we are in a phase of human history where we have the luxury to effectively work from anywhere. Our full studio is work from home, fully remote. We have guys in 20 different countries all over the world, right? And we're able to collaborate and coordinate and get things done and still build this thing. So in so many ways, I think that that Star Atlas is a digital representation of that. And again, we're breaking down global borders, we're creating labor market opportunities, and I could see that transpire in any number of ways. But even to the extent where say you're a large operator of a fleet, you have maybe 100 or 1,000 different ships, you're unable to utilize all of them at one point in time. And so you go out and you put a job posting to pay somebody $5 an hour to fly my ship for me. And these are the routes that I need you to run. And this is the freighting that I need you to drop off over here. And all of this can be handled programmatically and automatically through the game, through job postings in game. And so uh, I think we're going to see a massive redistribution of wealth as a result of this idea of the metaverse and digital worlds and labor market opportunity.
Yeah, how fun in one way. There is that dystopian element to it, but on the other way, if we could just kind of dream a little bit, I mean, that opens up so much more fun. Like the average person is not going to be able to go play with a space falcon and just like shooting and destroying rockets and fighting and flying and all that stuff. And eventually, I'm convinced eventually things go more into full virtual, full immersive reality, whatever you want to call it, whatever we're calling it at that point in time. We know what we mean. But it gets more immersive, it gets more fun, and then that almost destroys any sort of restriction on the type of fun you can have, the type of experience you can have. I mean, we can have this conversation as we're flying in our rocket ships and zooming past the galaxies and into the cosmos. So in my opinion, it's like one of the most exciting things of all time. And yeah, it's just cool. Like, do you ever kind of like sit there and think like, wow, I could be building the next nation state that a billion people are actually going to be a part of, and truly going to influence the state of humanity moving forward? Like, do you ever kind of sit there and think about that, or how does that kind of get to you on the individual level?
Every day. I think about it literally every day, about the what the implications are of what we're building, and again, long-term vision, very ambitious scope, right? So I know we're not there yet. I think a lot about where we are today and what we need to accomplish to be able to get to that ultimate end goal. But we're taking the right steps, in my opinion, and I think data would suggest we're making the right moves to ultimately accomplish that. The dystopian comment is essentially, look, we're not trying to create the matrix here. We don't want people to be, sucked into VR and living their entire lives and like force-fed food so that they can just live in these digital worlds. But I think it is really incredibly powerful for people all over the world and really engaging and really fun. Like you said, you know, are any of us ever going to be able to get out to space? Are any of us ever going to land on Mars? That's debatable, let alone be able to explore an entire universe and fly and pilot these elaborate monsters of ships throughout the stars. So there's a deep component of human emotion that is interested in exploration and expansion. And that's one of those desires that we are able to satisfy with Star Atlas.
Yeah, I'm ready for the next podcast. If we can have it in one of the main ships, I think that would be the real breaking point when we can start to have these inside of the actual games with the respective avatars. And it feels like we're not far off from that point.
So I don't know if you guys will have to cut this part out, but I have some conversations ongoing with the Neo Tokyo community about this Titan class ship. It's a 7 kilometer ship in the game. It has these beautiful glass domes over it. It's a massive area. And our vision for that, not only is it a powerhouse if you were to use it in-game engagements and like battles, but you could turn this thing into an event venue. You could have mini games. What's Alex's something ball? What was it? I can't remember
Fight
the
ball.
bite ball. Yeah, so you could have a bite ball arena on the ship, and then NT holders could come in and play that, and but you could host conferences, concerts, like all different things that you can do on the ship. So maybe in the future, we'll be hosting one of these on that Titan.
Well, I'm definitely hoping that we can have a planet just for Neo Tokyo in this world. Just gonna plant that little seed on air here.
Yeah, well, it's in line with our vision, and we want to think about how we handle this tactfully, but we have a concept of tangential worlds wherein people are able to utilize, say, a template world, customize it to their own suiting, and then it becomes accessible through our game client. And whether or not that world lives directly inside the universe of Star Atlas, or it's something that you teleport or transport yourself to through a terminal, the idea is that you can come into Star Atlas and now maybe there's 20 different planets that 20 different groups have created. And if you want to experience that, you can go do that. And it can tie into all different types of token interoperability and NFT interoperability. You need to hold an NT citizen to be able to get into the NT planet, things like that. And these are all feasible, just takes time to get there.
I think it would be cool, and at least as like I always think of like show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome.
Mhm.
And for the different communities to get involved, in my opinion, one of the easiest ways would be like you're saying, put in token incentives like that. So maybe it would require a Neo Tokyo NFT to get guaranteed access, but then maybe others who are not who don't hold the NFT, maybe they can buy and have to hold some amount of bytes in order
Mhm.
to be able to get, limited time access, or, whatever that may be. Incentivize demand for assets of other communities in order for outsiders to be able to come in and then engage with the communities in that world. That to me could be like, wow, now Star Atlas becomes a place where different communities have an HQ, and that members are going to be there because the more that they're there, the more that they can interact with each other in this interesting world. And then other people are trying to get access, and other people are paying to get access to those people. So those probably going to more likely be higher level people, higher net worth, higher value people, for purely from an economic perspective. Everybody has equal value as humans, but you know what I'm saying. And that could spin into very interesting set of microcosms of Web3 all within Star Atlas, and bring all the communities in. I mean, there's so much you could do here. It's so fascinating to even think about.
There's so many different ways you could spin the economics. I mean, you can do maybe use the term class stratification, but you can have VIP areas, right? So you hold this NFT, you get access to this area. You don't hold it, you can still get access to the map, but you're kind of on the you're in the upper deck, right? So you can have it where if you hold the NFT, you get all free access to all of the events. Otherwise, people can pay and go to a concert, a digital concert. Kind of a crazy idea, but Fortnite has already proven that this model can work with millions of people joining digitally to a conference. And while it might sound a little bit absurd, I think especially as we see the progression of things like VR and full immersiveness into these games, there will be a point in time where the distinction between reality and digital are almost indistinguishable. So I think, yeah, those are all cool ideas. And in terms of the possibilities, I've almost thought of Star Atlas as almost being like a game launcher, like a Steam in a way, except you're not using a desktop program, 2D program to launch a game. You're actually like you're in Star Atlas, and if you go land on one of these planets, now you're all of a sudden in new IP. You're in a new title. You're in a zombie apocalypse map that you need to, survival game, and stuff like this. These are again, can we get there with the technology? I just like to imagine that we can, but really cool ideas.
Oh yeah, and I mean the digital concert sounds a little dystopian, but I've caught a lot of shows in the electronic scene. Half the time you're looking at the visuals that are
Right.
behind the DJ, and then the person
Yeah.
next to you is having a fully digital concert because they haven't put their phone down the entire time, so they're literally watching that concert through their phone. So it's already becoming digital-esque. We went to Zamna down in Tulum, and they had a three-story sort of like colossal titan that was like over the crowd. So you're already starting to see that. I love these sort of like what's possible imagination conversations because my synapses just start firing. So I'm imagining, okay, well, you're using Star Atlas and Polis. You just come into the Neo Tokyo terminal to get to the planet. Okay, well, you got to buy a visa in that planet's currency. So then, you exchange some of your, just like when you land in a new country, you take some of your Polis or your Atlas and you take it to the exchange, you grab the bytes and you're like, okay, well, now I got to pay for this visa. And then you have all the stratification on the planet. So the funny thing is when you're going to like look for like, okay, how would we do this on blockchain? I'm like, oh, well, how do they do this when we're doing it right now, just on a physical level?
Right. Oh yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, it's probably easier on chain than in the physical. I was just recently in Thailand, and it was when I landed in the airport, it was almost impossible for me to find an ATM that would actually allow me to withdraw in the Thai baht. But like on chain, you're just like, hey, just use the DEX and swap it, and it goes through a bridge, and then all of a sudden, you've got Ethereum asset and Solana based asset all in one place. So I think it probably gets easier in these digital worlds and on chain in the future.
100%. I actually want to go back to the music, the digital music festival idea for a second, because I think one of the evidence or point pieces of evidence that would actually support that that would be a big thing. One, they've already happened and they've been cool. But two, if we look at, what would make that special, it would be the concurrent viewership amongst a large group of people all at the same time, right? So if you think about like a live sports in the US, a live football game, one of the reasons why people really like football, it's not because they necessarily care about a bunch of people throwing leather to each other and, beating the shit out of each other. Although, that has its place. But I think what really it gives people is a sense of connectedness of, oh, wow, 36 million people are tuning in with me right now to watch the same thing that I'm watching. And they care about it, and I have this connection to other people that I don't otherwise get in my, very digital, cold, non-connected world that a lot of us are really living in right now. In my opinion, as much as we can in the virtual, in the gaming sector, recreate that sense of connectedness of like, this is where the people are, this is where the rest of the attention is, that compounds into something that becomes really cool. And that's why I think live sports has continued on for so long, is because people know that they can get that sense of connection with others. You could talk about it later. You could be texting during it, whatever it is. There's a live component, but the vast majority of people are not live. But it's that concurrent connectedness, in my opinion, which is what really makes that special. And that's something where I think virtual first actually has the advantage, because we can craft experiences for the masses, because the live is crafted for the live, but the virtual can be crafted for the masses.
I love that. I mean, humans are social creatures. We like to be included in groups. Tribalism is very real. People collectively might like the NFL, but for damn sure they like their team and they hate every other team, and they know that they're a part of that group, right? And like that's part of what's exciting. I will say on the concert front, there's a number of challenges that I think are ahead of us in terms of replicating the real energy, and I mean just that energy actually is one thing that's difficult to replicate. It's one thing to visualize something and observe something. It's different when the stadium is rumbling around you and people are cheering and you hear that in the background and you're watching a play take place. That's very hard. So the audio cues, again the energy that's surrounding you and how you interpret that, the sense of touch, which I think to some extent can be replicated with haptic feedback, but not really there yet. But it's difficult to fully replicate or visualize fully replicating a physical experience. But I think we can get 90% of the way there, maybe 95% of the way there.
Okay, how about this? Everybody's in their spaceships. Everybody's concurrently flying together. It's a moving stadium that has the entertainment, and everybody's flying together with the haptics. So when the bass drops, everybody's like, "Ugh," and they feel it, and they actually physically feel it. I think we could get pretty close. And I think it could be cool because you have the visuals that you're participating in creating with all the ships going at the same time, right? That
Yes.
could be sick.
Yeah, and Nick, I think you mentioned it, people on their phones now at every live, all you see is like phones in the air. Um, if you're at a digital event, all of it can be recorded. You don't need to hold up your phone, right? And it can be recorded from your perspective, from your VR headset too. So it's like whatever you look at is what your personal recording of the event is. You don't need to worry about holding up your phone. You can take and edit your content and share that on social media if that's what you want to do. So in some ways, I think it could actually be better than the standard physical experience today.
Yeah, and it's going to be super interesting to watch how these iterations get closer and closer. I think in some ways you could view the sphere as one of the largest physical investments in the metaverse because you're already taking the location of the show and swapping that out for a digital representation, which you're getting this sort of best of both worlds from a technological standpoint of what's available today. Obviously, I'm a gamer and I've got headsets laying around. I don't have a haptic feedback set. So instead of, unless I'm turning my sub up super high, I'm not getting that full effect. But it's just very interesting to see step by step that is the direction that we're heading. And it started with instant replay where everybody's looking up at the same like screen, and we're just slowly marching towards this like more and more digital representation, this digital world. So, I'm super, super stoked about it. And I think, the possibilities are just endless, and every single new piece of hardware we're getting, whether it's Apple's new headset or the Quest 3, we're just taking these steps, getting closer and closer. So super, super exciting. Really brings my inner nerd out.
My
It's only
question here is, how do you, in this virtual world, imagining full immersion, right? How do you do the equivalent of screen capture? Because screen capture is just you're right there. But if it's full immersion, it's everywhere. How do you both capture that and then replay it from from what vantage point? How do you maybe that's the easily solved technical question, but you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like if you could take a screenshot, a 2D screenshot on your computer, but then you're in a fully immersive environment and there are people that need to be able to interact and visualize that both in a 3D or a whatever D environment as well as the just the pure screen. How do those interactions happen? I mean, that to me is where some of the technical complexities come in that are just way beyond my pay grade, but probably be very interesting for smarter people than me to solve.
I'll just speculate for the moment. I think there are a number of different ways that you handle that, almost infinite amount of ways that you could. But I mean, it would almost be like an optical capture would probably be the first suggestion I would make. So it's what is your field of view, and that's what you're able to record. And then alternatively, I could even point to like we have these little nodes that hover around. They're effectively cameras. It's kind of just it's just like all of the different cameras around an NFL stadium or any sports arena. They're always the production room is always switching between the best perspective on whatever action is taking place on the game. Well, you've got a little panel that lets you decide which node, which perspective do you want to choose for any particular point in time. So it is kind of cool though, because that can be infinitely expanded into every single perspective you can possibly imagine throughout the game. I did want to say, only a matter of time until Star Atlas subsidizes these full immersive physical feedback kits for people with the VR headset, with the haptic suit, with the PC. And the way that you pay that back through time is by playing the game. You earn some Atlas and you ultimately pay it off. But now you have full access to the technology that you need to play. I say a matter of time, decade plus probably, but again, dreaming big.
Oh,
Sign us
definitely. And
up.
that's, yeah, right. I was about to say, yeah, put me on that wait list. That's very Ready Player One. I think that's actually might be in the book where, people end up having to work off their headsets and such. From the view, like the visual perspective, I think you like can maybe take some examples of like Zoom, this podcast, for instance, we're capturing speaker view and then we're capturing gallery view. You could kind of see it in its infancy in the, I don't know if you guys were big Halo nerds, but the red versus blue videos that they used to make back in the day. And that was, utilizing Forge, and you could cut from the first person perspective and then get that full view from like the Oracle's perspective. So, I think it'll be like anything else where you'll end up paying either a third party or the venue who's hosting, being like, now for the streamers, would you like first person support or third person support? Would you also like, for this fee, you can get the full, like, sort of like a top down view. And because, at the end of the day, it's all sort of a storage problem. So as cloud gets stronger and stronger, and we're able to compress more and more, and sort of approach, what our brains are able to do. Jeff Bezos was just talking about this on the Lex Friedman show, of just how one of the amazing things about our brain isn't the level of computation, it's how we can do it so energy efficient. Our brain runs on like a 10-watt light bulb. To run a 3070 on my graphics card, you would think I'm heating this entire building. So no, I love these sort of conversations. It's very exciting to think about what we're going to be able to see in the future.
Yeah.
Swagner, I know we're a bit over time here. I want to get your thoughts on AI. I'm not sure if it's relevant to what you guys are building. I would imagine it is. Um, how is that going to impact Star Atlas? How's that going to impact everything that you guys are building? And then maybe you could scope out and talk about how you think it's going to impact crypto gaming as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a topic that's come up quite frequently for obvious reasons. With GPT-4 coming out and kind of everything that is arising from that. I'm a proponent for it. I think it improves game development. It reduces timelines for production. It significantly, or has the potential to significantly improve art production pipelines, which makes up about 80% of a game's time and cost to build. I know there's some controversy around utilization of AI and how custom is everything truly, and is it legitimate art if it's being produced by AI? Ignoring all of that, because from my perspective, I don't necessarily care. I mean, we want a unique environment. We want everything that's in Star Atlas to be custom to Star Atlas. But I could see the artists that are on our teams ultimately become AI producers. They're telling the AI what to do, and they're driving the output of that algorithm. And the data sets that you use can be completely custom data sets, so you're not worried about copyright infringement or plagiarism or whatever you want to call that. I think of like three categories of AI that are attractive. One is even on the coding tools. So just for the guy that's working out of a terminal, or out of an IDE, coding every single day, well, same thing. They can be leveraging the AI tool set to help produce code blocks more efficiently so the game gets built faster. Same thing on art production pipelines. And then the third thing that I think is really cool, it comes back to that whole dystopian theme, but the idea of AI agents or AI NPCs in the game, where you can have these very human-like conversations with an intelligent NPC. And I genuinely see people forming relationships with these artificial characters going into the future. I've referenced in the past, and I could be getting this culturally wrong, but I think it's Japan, where it's for like decades now they've had these virtual girlfriends like on a tablet or on a phone, and it's like on the train and they're interacting with their girlfriend and having a conversation. I think, as bad as that might sound to some people, I actually think that that's a tremendous benefit to the mental health of a lot of people who maybe just don't have the opportunity to truly socialize and connect with another person. And this becomes an avenue for them to do that, and it's with a character that has empathy for the person that it's interacting with. So I think that's really cool. That's more of a kind of content availability standpoint and how immersive a game becomes to you, whereas the other things are more development efficiency.
Yeah, I think the last part of the AI NPCs, in my opinion, are what are going to be felt the most by the individuals and the people. I mean, if you have like, let's say you have your NPCs that are, uh, you have to go fight them. Maybe you do some initial like fighter pilot training in the beginning to teach people how to fly their ships and how in combat. But then over time, maybe you have like an AI race that it's going out and it's foraging for materials and building its own ships, and it wages war and negotiates and fights and plays and whatever else. Like, maybe there's like a that maybe that's the native Star Atlas race where you know eh, everybody's trying, all at some point, trying to kind of interact with you guys too, through the AI. There's so many ways that could happen. And then as it's fighting players, it learns and it becomes smarter, and then people have to team up against it and all that stuff. But yeah, no, I think I absolutely am fascinated by the idea of what's going to happen from the proliferation of that and where it's going to go. So it's interesting that you guys are thinking about it too.
That'd be an incredibly interesting experiment. You take all of the guardrails off the way that the AI NPCs behave and see if they consume the universe. Because that probably is an indication of how our real world AI might behave in the future.
Oh yeah, I think simming with AI, just running simulations is going to be a big part of it. Very like, sort of excited for the intelligent NPC. I think as dystopian as like people having relationships with NPCs are, we actually have a huge problem, I think, in the world right now of people who are feeling super isolated and don't have any connections. And unfortunately, like that manifests in some of the most destructive behavior that, fills the headlines. We don't have to go down that road. So, people don't have a lot of good solutions for that problem. So maybe, when you compare to the ideal, oh, well, it'd be better if they had this real person friend or this real girlfriend. But if that's not an option, something's usually a whole lot better than nothing. And we're having some huge issues with people who have nothing. And, I think it's very easy to imagine people forming these relationships. When I played Halo 2 for the first time with my brother, we kept one of the like assistant guys alive and we would restart checkpoints if he got like stuck within a lead or something. It was just a random Marine in our squad. He had no lines except for like maybe like, good to see you, Chief. And we were like, Jeffrey, you're one of us and we're not finishing this game without you. You're in the Warthog, you're one of us. So,
I
with
love that.
just one line, I was able to like, make this whole ethos around. So, there's probably more than a couple people out there like me. So I'd imagine that people are going to be forming relationships with these AI constructs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, I think we're roughly about at our time here. We went a bit over. Did have a couple other topics to cover, but I actually think we covered a lot of ground here. So, um, Swagner, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to come chat with us and come share. Obviously, you're a part of Neo Tokyo and a very valued member of Neo Tokyo. So, really appreciate you coming on and sharing some wisdom, sharing some time with us. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, guys. This was a really enjoyable conversation. Happy to come back. We can finish up those other topics some other time. But thank you guys for the invite and for the conversation.
Yeah,
Anytime, brother
thank
man.
you. That was a ton of fun. Big thank you to the audience too for tuning in. And we will be back with more episodes of Neo Tokyo's official podcast, Interlinked. Have a good one, everybody.
Tokyo.